Where do they go next? I think they got to trade Papelbon. This guy with his fastball and his hijinks and his IQ below 6.
It's funny how quickly what was kind of a sidelight sort of rumor. Well, oh, they've got Wagner now. They could keep Wagner for 2010, make him the closer, kind of have him school barred. Yep. And then maybe they could trade Papelbon. That was really kind of a very minor thing that very few people were talking about. And then one big money save gets blown like it was. All of a sudden, it's on everybody's lips. And it's it's a plausible scenario. It's a very odd winter for them because they really don't have a lot of free agent style flexibility. Jason Bay is obviously the biggest profile free agent on the team, but he's also really the only one. It's after 2010 when their roster can really shake up a little bit. They've got Ortiz for another year. They've got Lowell for another year. Mm-hmm. They've got Beckett for another year. They've got decisions on Victor Martinez and Alex Gonzalez, who they have to decide if they want to bring them back on their options. Then they're free agents after 2010.
Well, I think there's no question that they're going to bring Martinez back.
Yeah. Oh, I think so. But it's, do you sign him to a long-term deal now? Do you wait another year? I feel like Theo wants to. They're close. They're not a team that is in disarray by any sense, but we're getting to the end of this run with these face guys who we know really well and who have been here for so long.
Yeah.
This next year, really, if they do come back, is really their last shot. And Epstein said as much when the team broke up the other day. It's getting to be time where you have to try to proactively recycle that roster. And if you can't do it via free agency, you have to do it via trade. And they do have the chips in the system to make some deals.
But do they really? What do they really need to improve on? They definitely have starting pitching that's good enough.
I think their defense was very poor during the year. I think Mike Lowell came back spectacular. I think he was their best defensive player in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But defense, when you have good pitching, if you can supplement it with defense, you become an incredible force because teams can't score on you.
Yeah.
And then your offense, a little bit of the pressure can be taken off. We saw that in 2007. Admittedly, that was still when they had Manny and David in the middle of the lineup. But if you can keep the other team from scoring, that offers you a whole lot of different ways to build your roster. You can be a speed team like the Angels used to be and play small ball. You know, they've got a young core here of guys who they're leaning on for the future. Pedroia, Euclid, Lester. They got Matsuzaka until 12. They don't have Beckett. Beckett's a decision. I think that they will bring him back, but he's another one of those 2010 guys where after that you have a decision to make. You know, do you go with Buchholz instead? But I feel like he wants to shake that roster up, but his hands are kind of tied for one more year.
And, I mean, do you think there's any? I mean, Lowell clearly he's still an above-average third baseman, offensively and defensively.
When he has health, absolutely.
Could they not? Would no one be willing to trade for Mike Lowell?
I think Mike Lowell is not a prime candidate for a trade, but what he showed this last week is that if he has his health, he's among the better defensive third basemen that you're going to find. His offense was atrocious. He didn't see a lot. He didn't see a lot of pitches.
Not all year. I mean,
no, I'm talking about this week. He didn't see a lot of pitches. Yeah, but those are good pitchers that he faced.
Yeah, I understand that.
He almost looked like he was trying to get his at-bats over with. That's how bad it was. 2-3 pitches and a soft out every single time there.
He was poor.
His only hit was that one single in the 8th of Game 3 to score the insurance run as that worked out.
Don't you think that they have to hang on to Ortiz, though? It doesn't make any sense to get rid of Ortiz. And based on the numbers and how career arcs go, and there's at least a good chance that if you erase the first 2 months of the season, which I know you can't do, but if he hits 270 next year with 35 home runs, which he certainly could, that was his pace in the second half. Can't he come back next year and hit 35 homers and hit 270?
The word that Epstein used on Monday afternoon was force. In that if Ortiz is going to be the DH of this team, he has to be a force. They don't have that major bat in that sort of power-producing stuff in the middle. They have
who does though? Who has a great hitting DH? Are they out there?
Are they out there in the sense that they're available? I feel like they're kind of stuck with Ortiz a little bit.
If you can get Ortiz, I mean, if your DH hits 30 homers and hits 270, you're happy.
If you can get that Ortiz next season, I think you take him because it becomes difficult to move a guy who's going to make $12.5 million and is clearly on the downside of his career. But
Right.
he also did not hit against good teams. He was
he did look
absent in the
bad.
playoffs. He was absent in last year's ALCS. He was completely useless for 2 months.
He'd look awfully good. To me, he'd look really good as the number 7 hitter.
Yeah, I agree with that. But then there has to be a new 4-5 hitter. You've got Euclid is there.
Yeah.
JD Drew had his best season, but he still only hit 24 home runs.
Yeah,
why do I keep saying Bay? Bay is a critical question, though.
Yes.
Drew is a complementary piece. Ortiz has kind of become a complementary piece. Euclid is close, but he's still kind of a complementary piece, too. Somebody's got to anchor that lineup. And the guy may be out there, but then you get into, well, what would you get if you traded Papelbon? You could get that sort of an impact bat.
Well, they have to choose what they want. Do they want to get a great fielding shortstop? I mean, do they want to bring back Gonzalez, who certainly looks to me like a great fielding shortstop?
I see no reason not to bring him back for next year.
But you can't, but that's assuming, because you're not going to have to worry. You're not going to have to carry Veritek's bat next year, probably.
No, that at worst, he takes his $3 million option and you send him on his merry way with a paycheck.
Right. And then with Martinez as your catcher, you have more flexibility. Now you can carry a shortstop that doesn't hit, or that hits 230 with 15 homers.
We saw the major push that they made for Mark Teixeira, and then we saw what Mark Teixeira did in New York this year, which is deliver exactly the sort of offense and defense that this team desperately needed, and still desperately needs. And I know it seems obvious to say, hey, we should get this great player, but that's the kind of push that he made last year, and he didn't get him, and he said, in a manner of speaking, well, let's wait.
Yeah.
And they waited, and they had a 95-win team, and they got into the playoffs. Can he wait through another year?
Right.
I think that he can, knowing that 2010 is when this roster can really be reshaped in the winter of 2010.
Because they can win 95 games again next year.
Yeah, and that's all that you're asking the team to do if you're Epstein is win 95, get in the playoffs, get yourself healthy for a run, and if you catch a couple of breaks, who knows what could happen.
Well, one word that he at least in the comments that I saw from the breakup day, was he mentioned communication a lot, and I believe he mentioned it with both Ortiz and with Daisuke. And is that something that you think didn't happen last offseason, that they weren't on top of these guys in terms of what they were doing prior to the season? Because those are two guys, obviously, that couldn't contribute anything, at the beginning of the season. So is that something that they're going to focus more on in this offseason, to stay on top of those guys, to make sure that when they come back, they are?
Well, I think it's an interesting – the two of them are definitely coming from different places. Daisuke has shown that he can succeed here, and I think with that has come a little bit of stubbornness, because he has had success now at both levels, and there's this sort of disconnect between the two sides, that they feel like what they did with him during this season, where they shut him down, they basically built him back up, they had a spring training, they feel like that allowed them to show him, hey, these methods that we use are not necessarily the ones that you use, but they allowed you to have success. You came back and you had 4 pretty good starts. Ortiz is another. It's an interesting mix of guys that they have. They have a lot of veterans, but they also have a very set system of what they feel like are processes that will help players succeed and stay healthy. And it's helped Beckett. Brad Penny, when he was here, sung the praises of the shoulder program to the heavens. They've shown that the methods that they use work, but you've still got to convince guys that it's the only thing that they need to do. Mm-hmm. And when you have veteran players, that's not always as easy as it seems.
Mm-hmm.